I'm going to call this meeting of Gloucester School Committee to order. I'll remind everybody that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners, and I'll ask you to join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
liberty
and justice
for all.
Thank you. A little slow on this. Okay, we're back. Oral communications. If there's anyone here who would like to address the school committee on any subject not on the agenda, this is their opportunity. If you are calling in, you have to press *9, and I will see that you want to speak. If you are coming in on computer, there should be a little icon down at the bottom of your screen that says raise your hand or raise hand. And if I see that, we will recognize you. Okay. We have one person, Mr. Lewis. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. How are you? My name is Matthew Lewis. I'm a teacher at O'Malley School. And tonight I am speaking about the Now More Than Ever campaign. First and foremost, I wish you all health and safety in these times. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'll keep this very brief. The Now More Than Ever campaign is a prolongment of the Fund Our Future campaign, which was passed a few months ago. This campaign that was successfully run and passed will be bringing more funding into Gloucester Public Schools. With the current COVID-19 crisis, we believe that there needs to be more robust involvement and funding for our schools. Therefore, I am asking that the school committee supports the following. Congress should approve New Deal level funding for state and local governments in response to the economic crisis caused by this pandemic, raising revenues progressively if necessary to ensure that they can fulfill their obligations to educate our students. The Massachusetts legislature and Governor Baker should fund public education, pre-K through higher education, at the level needed to maintain current staffing and services, fully fund the first year of the Student Opportunity Act, and enable students in our state's economy to thrive as we begin recovering from the pandemic. Gloucester should maintain their commitment to fully fund our public schools. Thank you.
Thank you. We will look at all of that, and we will do our best to secure as much funding as we can for schools.
Thank you. I will be sending some information along in the coming days.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to address the school committee? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to comments from the chairperson. I'd just like to reiterate pretty much what I said last week, 2 weeks ago. These are trying times. A little bit of patience with everybody. It goes a long way these days. I know the stress levels are high. Teachers are working very hard. Everybody's working hard. They're learning new things and trying to make this all work. And it's not easy. I just want to thank everybody for all the good work they've done and ask everybody to bear with us, and everybody's trying to do the best they can. Recognitions, Dr. Sapphire.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have one. The Plum Cove Principal Search Committee has done its job. We had a very competitive field, and we now have a candidate who has signed a contract. And I would like to introduce our new principal of the Plum Cove Elementary School, Mr. Dan Jewett. And you see he's here on the screen. Perhaps ordinarily I would give a description and a background and stuff, but I warn you, he has extensive experience in the art of debate. So I want to leave nothing to chance. I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. And if you have any questions, please feel free, but at your own peril.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to join you tonight. And I look forward to meeting everybody in person when that opportunity presents itself. I most recently have been the assistant principal at Newberry Elementary School in Newberry for the last 5 years. And that's been a really rewarding experience working there. Prior to that, I worked for 2 years in the same school district in the Triton Regional School District as a K-12 curriculum coordinator. And that gave me an opportunity to work pre-K to 12 and do all sorts of curriculum work specifically on the elementary level. And prior to that, I taught at Manchester, Essex for 11 years. And so I'm really excited to be coming back to work on Cape Ann. I live in Beverly with my wife and 4 kids. I have 4 elementary school children in grades 7, 5, 3, and preschool. So I know, like a lot of parents out there, what these last few weeks have been like. So I'm really excited to be joining Plum Cove in such a great school, and Gloucester Public Schools in such a great district.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we look forward to meeting you in person also. Are there any other recognitions? Melissa.
Thank you. We didn't get a chance to meet last week, and there was big events last week. It was National Nurses Day and Week, and it was also Teacher Appreciation Day and Week. So I just want to recognize our staff of nurses who have been working with the city. Their contributions and commitments to our community are much appreciated during this COVID. And also to the teaching staff and the support, those that support our teachers too. You know, they've been struggling with the remote learning and keeping our kids involved, and just wanted to commend them and recognize them because we didn't have the opportunity to last week. So nurses and teachers, yay.
Thank you. And I'm sure we all agree with those sentiments.
Yes, we do.
Any other recognitions? Okay.
Yes, I have one.
Okay.
Yes. First of all, thank you to everyone, because the fact is, it's not easy. I mean, some of us are doing 7 Zooms a day and we're doing all these things, but I wanted to recognize also the teachers who not only are they teaching and they have their own students and children, but also take the time to make those shields for our frontline people. The fact is, Gloucester Education Foundation today, Kathy Clancy was with me. It was colder at Pavilion Beach, and Jamie Ferrer does a plunge every day for a different cause. And today was the Gloucester Education Foundation, and to support all the teachers that took their time to make the shields. And I was so impressed because, and the students, Gloucester High School with O'Malley, 2,000 shields were made, and I didn't realize it takes 3 hours per shield. That's a lot. And they didn't start in April like everyone else. I mean, in March. They started a month after. So, and all those shields. So, you know what? Kudos to all of them, because it's amazing. After they do teach their students and whoever else they have to teach their homeschooling, they also take time and they go down to the high school and to do that with our students. So, you know what? If I had the courage, I would have jumped in, but I don't. So, but I did want to thank them because it was really an amazing job. I didn't realize what it takes to make all those shields. And again, if anyone's listening and they need one, thank you, Dr. Sapphire, for that letter. I remember the telephone number is 978-282-5550. Give them a call if you need a shield, or now I heard they make shorter ones for, shorter people and for dental hygienists. So the fact is that, you know what, we should be very proud, because you're right, Melissa, the teachers, the nurses who jumped over on the city side, cafeteria workers, everyone that's working is just amazing. I say it all the time. I am so fortunate to be mayor of this city because it's easy with all of you. Thank you. And welcome, Daniel.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other recognitions? Then we will move on to our Student Advisory Council. I see Catherine is here.
Yes.
And we're looking forward to an update of home learning.
Home learning is going relatively well. Today was AP, this week has been AP testing. I took an AP English literature composition exam today. Everything went well. I applaud the College Board for the changes they've made to accommodate the testing this year. I don't have too much to speak on. The Senior Student Council has been meeting weekly to discuss how we're gonna go about events this year. So I hope on giving some updates with that in weeks to come. And if you know anyone that has elderly or at-risk people who need help running errands, NHS at Gloucester High School is helping everyone out. So spread the word, and that's all I have.
Okay.
So how do they reach you if they need their service?
You can email Ray and Menery or Principal Cook, and they'll know exactly how to get in contact with who needs to be contacted.
Great, thank you. And also kudos to our Gloucester Police Department. It is Police Week. Thank you so much.
Any questions for Catherine? Any other questions for Catherine?
Kay, would you mind just touching base about what you and Miss Lothers have been up to? She's been working really hard to, get that stuff delivered. So,
Catherine, did you hear that?
Can you repeat that, Joel?
I was talking about the delivery you and Miss Lothers got yesterday.
Oh, yes. Our Gloucester boards were delivered yesterday. So I wasn't going to say anything because we haven't exactly come up with a date yet that we're going to sell that's been approved, but we're hoping to have a safe social distance curbside pickup for Gloucesteropoly boards. But that will be posted everywhere as soon as we decide what day is safe for us to do so.
And I just want to add to that, Tracy Lothers at the high school has been, working her tail off for these kids to make sure this happens. So, kudos to her and kudos to the kids.
Okay. Any other questions of Catherine? Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any member of the school committee would like to remove for further discussion? Kathy?
Yes, I'd like to remove the Building and Finance Subcommittee minutes of March 4th, please.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. We'll take up Catherine. Kathy, you want to take up the Building and Finance Subcommittee meetings?
Yeah, the minutes were very, they weren't that extensive. They're just a couple pages. But in the first page, under A, towards the bottom, it says, Chairperson Clancy stated that the city, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to just make that clear and rephrase it to say, Chairperson Clancy stated that she hopes the increase related to the Student Opportunity Act money go directly to the school department. My point was that it's an increase in education funding, and my hope was that it would go, it would get credited to the schools, not, given out how much everybody advocated for that increase in funding. So I just wanted to be just a little more clear on that.
Okay, Maria, do you have those changes?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thanks, Maria.
You're welcome.
Okay. We make a motion to accept the BNF meeting minutes of March 4th, so we can vote on that separately.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiesen,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes.
It carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Now back to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Maria, roll call vote.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince. Melissa, you're muted.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. It passes unanimously. We'll move on to our deliberations on educational issues. And first up is an update on the school closures, and that will tie right into the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item will be about the CARES Act, and then there are some guidelines presented by the Department of Ed, particularly with respect to high school seniors and graduation. And then I'll probably turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Bach, and talk a little bit about what we are thinking about as we are at this particular juncture with respect to school closure, the amount of time that's left in this school year, and what the future may bring. Beginning with the CARES Act, one of the elements of the CARES Act is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. This is a grant. It's a federal grant. It has the RFP application just went out on the streets on Friday. And this is monies that are available to districts. It's part of the what began as a $2 trillion CARES Act. There's an X amount of dollars that have come to the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, somewhere around $250 million. And I believe that Gloucester is eligible ballpark for approximately 80% of our Title I funds. Our Title I funds are $562,000 and change. 80% means that we would be eligible for a grant for $456,000 through this grant. The application, there are two options. Option 2 is for FY21 for the coming year. We don't know what we're going to be facing, but there are a host of things that no doubt are going to be part and parcel of what is necessary for schools and districts to acclimate themselves to the changing times. This ESSER, ESSER grant has been described as being flexible, and it includes a host of potential things that can be incorporated into the grant. And there are some waivers of our current federal grants, which provide a little bit of leeway as well. Some of the things that the grant can be used for include educational technology, internet connectivity, hardware, devices, software, etc., supplies and services that enable remote learning, mental health services and supports, which we know is going to be a very important thing, any activities to address the unique needs of our high needs children, low income, special education, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, homeless, foster care, anything related that can help to promote their educational programming and their well-being. The monies can be used for diagnostic intake assessments to gauge students' knowledge and skills, for example, early literacy screening, assessing learning gaps to inform teaching and address those gaps, the possibility of planning and implementing summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, something that the district may be looking toward next year, providing administrators and other school leaders with resources to address individual school needs, training and professional development on any topic from effective remote learning strategies to sanitation and minimizing the spread of an infectious disease and everything in between. Supplies and services to sanitize district facilities and personal protective equipment. We've been having some conversation about that in terms of what ultimately should the district's responsibility be with PPE equipment versus what the potential costs are. And that's something that's going to have to be debated because even with a situation where perhaps we have staggered attendance at school, if there are 1,500 children in the buildings on any given day, approximately half of the district, and if we have to provide masks for 180 days, plus masks For 400 teachers and paraprofessionals, right there, we're talking about $340,000 estimated if that were the case. So we have to look at this long and hard and judiciously to figure out what our role is and what we can afford to do when it comes to the supplies and services for protective equipment. Any activities under ESSA, IDEA, of course, which is special education, Perkins, which is vocational, McKinney-Vento, homeless. These funds can be used and applied there. The funding can be applied to coordinating long-term closures, how to provide meals, technology for online learning, guidance for carrying out the IDEA requirements, compensatory services, and providing educational services consistent with any applicable requirements. Coordination systems to improve district preparedness and response efforts to COVID-19, and any other activities necessary to maintain district operations and services to continue to employ our existing staff. So it's wide open, things that we really need to begin to think about. These suggestions were only printed out and sent on Friday, as I said, and we'll be taking a very close look at this. I'm sure we're going to want to share that information with BNF as well. There are also a host of waivers of normal ESSA fiscal requirements. Ordinarily, Title I money from one year to the next, there's a 15% limit on carryover. That's been waived, which means that more than 15%, if it's available due to the fact that we've had school closure, that money can be carried over. FY19 funds, ordinarily there's a 2-year to 27-month carry on those particular grants, and those monies needed to be spent by September 30th, 2020. That timeline has been extended now to September 30th, 2021. That includes Title I, II, III, IV, McKinney-Vento funding, Title IVA, Title V, and Title II. So there's a host of waivers there as well. So we have the application in hand. We're ready to get started on that. The due date is July 1st, but I'm sure we'll be getting it in more quickly than that. Some of the other recommendations coming from out of the Department of Ed this past week, most of it has to do with the graduating class of 2020. And to make a long story short, there's a shift from the formalized competency determinations, the criteria that the Department of Ed establishes toward local graduation requirements from the state to the localities. They are recommending that if students have not fulfilled their local graduation requirements and haven't passed the 10th grade MCAS, that we should be providing credit recovery programs, which we already have in place for students under normal conditions. Also with respect to competency determinations, there's now that CD has been modified and it calls for the competency determination to be awarded based on successful completion of relevant high school courses. For English and math, that means their senior years, a certification that they have passed their senior year in those particular subject areas. For science, technology, and engineering, they need to demonstrate that they have passed in biology, chemistry, physics, or technology and engineering. For students for whom we had submitted education proficiency plans, they simply, like I had mentioned above, need to complete courses required in their education proficiency plan. With respect to MCAS, for our current juniors, seniors, and sophomores, future guidance is forthcoming. Some of the other advisories from the Department of Ed, things that are already in place, have to do with the extension of phone counseling. This is a precarious time for a number of students. Some have learned about their post-secondary plans. Others may not yet have decided or are waiting. So they are asking that we up our efforts in terms of counseling with those students. It's particularly a sensitive time for potential first-generation college students who could have second thoughts over the summer, could be experiencing some anxiety. It's our job to try to bolster their sense of confidence as they move forward into the future. As far as graduation, other spring ceremonies, the department will be sharing further guidance, public health advisories for graduation ceremonies. They'll be extending it to us as soon as they have more information from the public health agencies as well. I can say that the high school has been very active working with stakeholders, and I'd say they're just about in a position to give us a sense of what graduation exercises and ceremonies will be looking like for this year. In terms of grading and high school coursework, the high school certainly, as well as the middle and the elementaries, have been working extensively on the issue of grading. As the Department of Education has mentioned, there's this balance, very delicate balance. Remote learning is new, different, difficult, but there's a balance between holding students harmless for circumstances that may be beyond their control, while at the same time holding them accountable for their work and for their performance. Two specific suggestions made by the Department of Ed is the credit, no credit system. Students who are not passing a course before the remote learning, however, should be provided with an opportunity during remote learning to make satisfactory progress to earn credit. So this is an extension of the same mentality that spoke about credit recovery, but now being extended to students in all high school grades. And students, in terms of incentivizing students, they should be able to bump up their final course grade based upon the work that they are able to do and submit. This too is part and parcel of what the high school is doing. The next item has to do with the national testing updates, and the May and June SATs and PSATs, I'm sure we're all quite aware, have been canceled. ACT.
Kathy has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My question is, will Principal Cook be sending out a message to high school students about that particular option? Well, those options you just talked about. Specifically also what students would have to do to make a request if they want to try to bump their grade a little bit.
Well, I presume that James is here. He had some difficulty with the internet, so I'm not sure if he's on. But I think I can say with confidence that they have made extensive efforts to let students know and to incentivize those students that you're in a position with some work, with some hard work, that you can improve upon your grade.
Great, thank you.
And I can send out, I mean, he's got a whole chart, which I can send out to you if you like. As far as the ACT, it's being rescheduled. There's no charge, it's free rescheduling. I don't know if these are tests that are going to be at home or not. The information was not provided, but we'll find out about that. The AP exams are happening. Physics, math, they're all taking place, these days as we're speaking. And all of our students, there are 111 students taking 166 exams. All of the exams are being administered at home. So there had been some advisories on what might need to be done if children were not able to take these exams and had to come in. That has not been an issue for Gloucester High School students. So again, 111 and 166 tests, which I think is quite on a par. And why wouldn't it be, since these kids had signed up at the beginning of the year in September. And it is reassuring that despite the disruption, these students are sticking it out, understand the importance, and also want to acknowledge the fruit of the work, the fruit of their labors, and see how they perform. They're competitive and they want to see how they're doing. So my kudos to them for sticking with it. The next item is a sort of a hurry up and wait, but can act as a segue to the assistant superintendent talking a little bit about what we're thinking about these days. But what will school look like in the fall? Things are pretty much up in the air. The governor, his next big announcements of potential for changing conditions and phasing in and whatnot is on May the 18th. I don't know how well that will speak to September. What I do know is that the Department of Ed does have a working group that is looking at what school might look like in the fall. The working group includes 4 area superintendents as well. We were told that they are looking at some of the states that are in the process of opening and looking to see what may or may not be working and trying to put their notes together so that the Department of Ed, the commissioner, can provide us with some advisory, possibly as soon as the next conference call, which could be as early as next week. Some of the preliminary stuff that's been bandied around, not spoken of substantially, but the potential being for staggered attendance. Instead of having 20 to 25 children in a classroom, half would go on Monday, the other half on Tuesday, and they would alternate, which certainly would then bring into play an extension of remote learning if that's were the case, which means that we have to be prepared and prepare our students and our teachers for that possibility. There was talk about temperature checks, kids coming in the door and checking their temperature, maximizing social distancing while at the same time educating students. So anything we've heard so far, I won't say has been vague, but I will say has been general in nature with respect to what we can anticipate. They also want to look at any summer programs that might be taking place, looking for some soft models that they then can extend and extrapolate upon in order to come up with some ideas for September as well. And with that said, I'd like to then now turn it over to Greg, who can talk a little bit about some of the things that are coming to the fore as we continue on with our remote learning through the rest of the school year.
Thank you. And I just wanted to mention that James Cook is on this call today in case there was something that you needed to have him address. He's had to telephone in, so his name doesn't show up. I'll keep it relatively, excuse me?
Greg, just give me a sec. James, if you want to chime in on something and you're calling in on phone, what you have to do is hit *9, and I will see that you would like to speak and can recognize you, okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry, Greg, go ahead.
No problem. I'll keep it relatively brief. Dr. Sapphire, in his discussion of the ESSA grant and the additional funds, covered a lot of the bullet points. So maybe I can highlight a couple of those. Really what things are coming down to are two key things. We're monitoring what is going on, and we're beginning to plan for what is to come. And so as far as monitoring, Dr. Sapphire and I have reviewed schedules from all schools and grade levels. I certainly am extremely confident and incredibly impressed by the work that I've seen. There's a lot of creativity, teamwork, and a lot of work that is represented. We've heard lots of feedback from principals and teachers, and I think we were able to put together a good program, and things are running they're running well, and there's a lot of good stuff happening. What we are also monitoring, though, which is not quite as positive, is we're monitoring student participation. And a recent survey came out in EdWeek, a national survey of teachers, pretty large group of teachers who reported that across the country within the last 2 weeks, student participation, I think almost 60% of the teachers polled were reporting some or significant drop-off of participation. It's not unexpected, but it does increase the challenges. And so we've spent some time looking at how we are doing that monitoring and how we're handling the outreach and the connections. And I have to say that our schools, our principals, our teams, and individual teachers are really going to great lengths to keep careful notes and records. They're looking at login statistics. They're looking at numbers of times that students respond to certain things. They're looking at work that's turned in, tracking assignments that are missed. And in many cases, putting a whole team on, getting to, even in one school reported the other day, we made contact with the very last student who we had not been, connecting regularly, and we've got them on a plan for regular work. And it's pretty impressive, but it involves a lot of work. So we do have to, I have to try to think about how we can centralize and collect a lot of that data that teams and teachers have been gathering, so we can come up with a sort of good composite picture of where potential gaps may be for students, and so that we can plan to use some of those funds to provide summer learning opportunities, and especially in the fall, we'd like to have extensive tutoring for any student who missed key things during the spring. So that's going to be a big job to sort of pull that all together and try to put together the supports we're going to need in the summer and the fall. So lots of monitoring going on. I do have to say, on one nice bright spot, I got an email today regarding student participation. There are some real some great things happening and some good bright spots. I got a message from Christine Castle, our English learner coordinator, and she said that good news is that the English learner staff, they meet weekly to discuss, to plan, to coordinate, and they all noted a significant increase in English learner student participation over the last week in both classroom and individual remote learning opportunities and assignments completed. They've gone over all of their caseloads and are right down to where they can pinpoint a single student who is not keeping up, and then they do that outreach. They had put together a plan the prior week to contact every single family to ask if they needed support, to underscore the importance of attendance and regular participation. They reached out to a number of interpreters and translators, and pulled them into action to help on calls. And so all of that hard work, I would say, that's been going on over the last few weeks is really borne fruit. So that was a nice email to get. So there's the monitoring and the continued outreach, and really, if we sprinted from right now until September with all the different variations of things and the unknowns and the work that we need to do, we couldn't plan enough for what's to come. So I'm pleased to report that that is happening as well. So while teachers and principals are, flying the plane they just built, they are also looking ahead to September, to summer in the September. So I met just the last few days with the ongoing teams of curriculum leaders and in key subject areas, and they have already started working on analyzing what curriculum adjustments need to be in place, how the pacing will be adjusted for the fall. They're looking at professional development needs that will be in place, how to share best practices from this remote learning period, and how to incorporate those as we move forward for two purposes. One, in the eventuality that we have some kind of modification of normal school operation in the fall, we'll be ready for it, but also for all the work that needs to be done to provide supplemental learning opportunities for students. They have already been working with me to discuss what a modified summer school might look like, how the opening weeks of school would look like, and again, how we can utilize remote learning in a hybrid fashion in the fall. We have been planning for technology needs, evaluating students who have not been accessing remote learning and making calls home to find out whether it's, where the barrier might be. And in some cases, I believe we've met almost every single Chromebook need, but we still have some work to do on perhaps procuring internet hotspots for some areas of the city. We have evaluated some diagnostic assessments that would be a little quicker to utilize, but also will give us immediate instructional information. So we're looking into purchasing and implementing those. And today I got information on a fully online new student registration enhancement that we can use immediately, hopefully by June 1st, so that the age-old paper packets, and so some of you who have been parents and know that sometimes you have to fill out the same thing several times, and the data is redundant a little bit sometimes. We'll be able to streamline that process, put it fully online with the ability to scan documents and have a workflow. So it's short turnaround, but I'm hoping we can have something in place in the next couple weeks. And then the last big piece we're looking at is almost every single grant that we had anticipated spending. We have to rethink and realign those grants. All the professional development that we had booked almost a year ahead. We booked last November for next November, and all of that has to be rethought. And we have to plan for contingencies, including remote learning, and to address more immediate needs next year. So there are a lot of people right now engaged in completely rethinking professional development for all of next year. So there's a lot that's going on, and we have about a month left of having more regular access to teachers. So this is an important time.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
Richard, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't really think so. So just to summarize some of the things, scheduling as far as next year is to be determined. Health and safety practices go without saying, but there's going to be a cost-benefit analysis as to what the district will or will not be able to do, depending upon things like the elementary secondary emergency relief fund. Outreach, Greg spoke about outreach and how can we be systematic about it. I think that from the reports we're getting, the teachers are doing a great job, but as one of our principals the other day mentioned, social emotional stuff is really at the top of the pyramid right now. So we're concerned about where our kids are at and what their mindset's going to be when they come back to school under, we don't know what kind of circumstances. The data tracking systems and looking at participation and production on the part of our students is something that Greg touched on. We'll continue to refine grading and engagement. What does it look like if we go into the school year with some sort of a different schedule that it does involve a portion or proportion which is remote learning? Then how is grading and engagement and that balance we spoke about before, how is that going to be impacted? The technology issues, it would have been great if we had a couple of weeks to work with students before the remote piece. Everything shut down immediately. But the training for teachers, students, and for parents and guardians as well. We are looking, as Greg mentioned, into the access for hotspots. We have some quotes from T-Mobile, a one-year license. I think Grant did mention to me that if we identify who the particular students are, we would then be paying per student, which as opposed to putting a hotspot somewhere and anybody who wants to tap into it can. So we're going to look and see what we can and cannot accomplish with quotes like from T-Mobile. And again, the professional development has to be both technological and programmatic. The paraprofessionals, they are on board. They are very appropriately anxious to want to help this year, and it's not always easy. It's one thing to have your paraprofessionals in the classroom. It's another to figure out how to delegate responsibilities remotely, and depending upon different children's needs, who's the point person, who's the backup, what's new learning, what's not new learning. There's a learning curve for teachers in a new environment to be able to work and maximize the effectiveness of their staff, the paraprofessionals. The special education program is very challenging. We spoke with some teachers the other day, and the amount of time they, as well as our regular education teachers, are putting in is extraordinary. But when you're also teaching and trying to meet the necessary services and accommodations for children, and the contact, and the communication, and the accountability, and the documentation, it's an extraordinary task that's before them, and some of them are getting burnt. Some of the contact's been very good. Our director of special education gave us some quotes about reaching out to kids, and they were all, the percentage of contact has been in the high 90s, but there are also some exceptions, particularly in areas like occupational therapy and physical therapy. Trying to provide those kinds of services remotely, electronically, is a very, very difficult task. But they're getting it done, but they're paying a price for it as well. Best practices in community building. We don't have time, but our principals and our teachers have excelled in trying to bring their particular communities together as best they can through a variety of different things, from drive-ups and sharing with all social distancing measures in place. Veterans has quarantines, not quarantines, but quaranteams. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but they are team building with their kids and reaching out. And it's true across all of the different schools. And the very last thing that I will say is that we need to learn, in terms of what remote learning is all about, what are those best practices? How can they be shared? And how can collaboration strengthen the efficacy and the quality of the product if, in fact, we have to go to remote learning, or if we're in a position where the district is integrating flipped classrooms, blended learning, and the various techniques associated with online instruction. So just a couple of things to bear in mind as we move forward.
Thank you. Samantha, you have a question?
Thank you. Just sort of back to the data tracking, like login statistics, response rate, assignment tracking. Are teachers the only ones that have access to that data, or is that something that paraprofessionals also have access to?
Greg, I think that's you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am not sure. So this is one of the reasons why, we need to turn our mind toward systematically gathering and collecting this. I do know at the school and grade level, they are sharing that information on a regular basis. They're meeting very frequently in their common planning time and in grade level teams. And the paraprofessionals are often part of that planning or meeting time. I have been interacting with quite a few paraprofessionals who have come to the main office over the last few weeks to get Chromebooks. And they have shared that they are regularly involved in those discussions. So while there may not be a custom-made, program or database for holding this all in one place across the district or school, I do know at the grade level they are covering all of that information, and that the paraprofessionals are part of those, and in fact have been helping out to do some of that outreach and connect to the students. So I know that they have been very much involved.
Yeah, I guess the overarching question is, you know, is there a way to delegate some of that data collection, take some of that responsibility off the teachers? It sounds like a lot of work to do that. I'm very unfamiliar with the day-to-day, obviously, and what that looks like in real life, but it sounds like quite a bit of additional work that seems like could be delegated pretty easily if there was sort of a system in place.
It is a lot of work. I think the systematic part has definitely happening on, as it needed to in this situation. It is happening at the school level and sometimes the grade level. But, to the extent possible, I feel very certain that paraprofessionals are helping to shoulder a lot of some of that load, for sure.
Rich?
Yes, just to build on that, both special education teachers and paraprofessionals each have to fill out service logs that document what was done, how it was served, this and that. The teachers and perhaps the principals have that information, but we don't have it in a full database yet, but that's what Greg was alluding to. So if a paraprofessional is working with a child, they have to fill out their own separate log, separate and distinct from the teacher's log. Number one. Number two, we spoke with teachers in negotiations on Monday, and they're they on a day-to-day basis have to say these particular children were having difficulty reaching, and the teacher will say these two children are the most difficult. I'm going to contact them. I'd like you to try to work with the other three, in addition to the kids who are participating. So at the ground level, that whole delegation piece is something that in a way is new because it's not in the classroom, it's out on the street, and they've got to be able to rely upon one another, and the teachers need to rely upon their paras to reach out to the kids and also to document it in their I forget, it's a long term, these record logs that they use.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I have just a brief question, and in the last few days, I've gotten a number of people contacting me, and I know that some of these have come through the mayor's office, wanting to volunteer or offering services. So my question is there some process in place for receiving these volunteers, or I mean, they're all over the place. People who want to help out with graduation, and people who want to help out with social and emotional issues that are trained psychologists. I'm not certainly in a position to tell them what to do. So should they contact you, Rich? Should they contact Greg? Or?
Well, I thought you were going to take it on, Mr. Chair. In the absence of your coming forward and volunteering, have them contact me and/or CC Greg as well, and then, as a spoke on the wheels, we can then delegate and send it out, and it's most appreciated. We've started getting some of those emails recently as well. The face shield information, when that went out, that really seemed to trigger people's interest in wanting to help out in any capacity. So publicly, thanks to them, and just please, yes, have them send their emails and contact me.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the superintendent's report?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, Maria?
Mayor Taken.
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Ms. Wieston.
Yes.
Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Favazza.
Yes.
Chairman Pope.
Yes.
And Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to our next item, which is the superintendent search. The search committee, I'd like to start by thanking all the members of the search committee who put in a number of hours and evenings and afternoons to get us to this point. They have, I believe, received 21 applications, and they've have interviewed a number of people, and this is all being facilitated by Dorothy Presser from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, who is here and to present their selection to be moved on to us for our final review and approval of hopefully the next superintendent. Do you want to weigh in on that, Melissa?
No, I would just want to introduce Dorothy and have her take over from here, because she has a lot to say and we have a lot to do on this topic tonight. So.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. Chairman Pope took a little bit of what I was going to say away, just to sort of refresh your memory. There were 21 applications that were received for the position of superintendent, and the search committee interviewed 8 of those people. And before I really get started, I'd like to give a shout out to the search committee. They were a great group to work with. They were invested, they were thoughtful, they asked great questions of me. And as Chairman Pope said, they spent a lot of hours interviewing these candidates, going through the resumes, and were very attentive in the work and very deliberative in their decisions. I usually enjoy working with screening committees. I think this group goes above and beyond my usual enjoyment. So with that, they interviewed 8 people and are sending 5 finalists forward to you. So I'm going to briefly go over who the finalists are and a little bit about them. You will also be getting either later tonight or tomorrow morning the full application packet of all the finalists. Just to let you know, the school committee gets the full application packet, but only the resumes are considered public documents. The other parts of the application are just for the school committee. So the 5 finalists are in alphabetical order. The first one is Ms. Laurie Galavan. She is currently the Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction and Accountability in the Winthrop Public Schools. She formerly held the same position in the Saugus Public Schools, and she began in Saugus as an elementary principal. She's also been an elementary principal in Newburyport and has also worked in Lynn and Springfield. She holds a master's in education from Cambridge College and has completed the National Institute of School Leadership program. The next finalist is Dr. Susan Cusco. Dr. Cusco was most recently held the position of Assistant Superintendent for Administration and Personnel in the Weymouth Public Schools. She also held the position of Director of Teaching and Learning in the Hanover Public Schools, where she started as an assistant principal of curriculum and instruction at the elementary level. She's been an elementary teacher and a special educator. I do note that when I said she's most recently had the position in the Weymouth Public Schools, her position was eliminated in a reorganization of the central office. She has earned her doctorate in curriculum teaching, learning, and leadership from Northeastern University. The next finalist is Mr. Kurt Lascaux. He was most recently Associate Superintendent for Human Resources in High School District 214 in Arlington Heights, Illinois. This is a district of 6 high schools from 8 different municipalities in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, with a total of 12,500 students. Prior to that, he served as principal of Prospect High School in Mount Prospect, Illinois, and as a division head of English and Fine Arts in Elk Grove, Illinois. Just so you know, when you see his resume, he left the position of Associate Superintendent in the District 214 in early March of this year. There had been a plan in place in the district to prepare for a successor position, and the timing of where the district stood in its initiatives and some personal circumstances made it the right time for him to leave that district. It may not be apparent that he's left when you look at his resume, but the screening committee was aware and had an opportunity to question him about that leaving, as you will as well as the process moves forwards. Mr. Lascaux does have roots in Massachusetts. He served as a leadership consultant with the Harvard University Leadership Development Group. He's been a teaching fellow and a researcher at various programs at Harvard. He's also been a principal intern at Greater Lowell Technical High School and an English teacher and coach in Newburyport High School. He holds a master and a certificate of advanced graduate study from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. The next finalist is Dr. Ben Lamas. He is currently the interim superintendent in Brookline. And just so you know, because he has that position of interim superintendent, the Brookline School Committee decided when they appointed an interim that whoever was interim would not be eligible for the position of permanent superintendent in Brookline. Prior to being the interim superintendent, he was the assistant superintendent for strategy and performance in Brookline. He's also worked for EF, that's Education First, as a vice president of professional development. He was also vice president at the National Center for Time on Learning and worked in numerous capacities in that organization on implementing expanded learning time. He's worked for several other organizations that focused on school improvement. He's been a member of the Cambridge School Committee and has taught middle school English in both Cambridge and in Needham. He holds a Master of Arts in Teaching from Tufts University. And last but not least, the last finalist is Ms. Nan Murphy. She is currently with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as a statewide system of support assistance lead. This means that she works at partnering with districts to help build systems and structures for improved outcome and also focusing on equity of student outcomes. Previous to that, she was the Director of Accountability and School Improvement in Lowell, a position that she moved to from the position of principal of the Krista McAuliffe School in Lowell. She has served as an assistant principal also at the McAuliffe School, as well as an elementary teacher in Wilmington and in New Bern, North Carolina. And she holds a Master of Educational Leadership from Gordon College. So those are the 5 finalists. And as I said, you'll be receiving the full application package with their full background, their letter, their cover letters and some letters of reference and other information shortly. So the next step for the school committee to think about is the next steps. On the original timeline, next week would have been a week to do site visits. I just want to put out there and maybe suggest that in other searches that I've been in, when there are a number of finalists, 5 finalists, sometimes the school committee decides to interview before doing site visits to be a little bit more efficient with time, interview all of the 5 candidates and narrow the list down a little bit before doing site visits and then some final interviews. So I don't know how the school committee feels about that, spending next week doing that maybe instead of setting up the site visits.
Just to be clear, Dorothy, what you're suggesting is that we do interview the 5 candidates and then reduce it to a lesser number?
Yeah, I'm two, maybe 3. Yep.
And then do site visits for those remaining?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Does everybody understand that process? So are you suggesting that we do 5, we have, how much time should we allow for an interview?
I would say you would allow probably between 75 minutes and an hour and a half. So an hour and a quarter to an hour and a half for the interviews. And
should we schedule more than 1 a day, or should we?
Depends on how early in the day you can get started. If you can get started in the late afternoon or very early evening, 2 a day I wouldn't do more than 2 in a day.
No.
But 2 a day would be reasonable. With a, somewhat of a break in between, give yourselves a chance to stand up and leave the computer for a few minutes and then get back to the next one. But 2 would not be unreasonable in a day if you could get started early evening or late afternoon. If you don't start until tonight, like you start your school committee meeting at 7 o'clock, I wouldn't try to do 2 interviews if you can't get started until that late.
Okay. And Laura.
Just 2 questions. Are we going to know what questions were already asked of the candidates and what their answers were to the screening committee?
You will know what questions were asked. You won't know what the answers were. All those interviews happened in executive session. So I can get you the list of questions, but I can't get you a summary of the responses.
Okay. And just looking ahead a little bit, by site visit, do we mean a Zoom site visit at this point?
Yeah, at this point with the searches that we've been doing since mid-March, we've been doing site visits virtually and in both directions. The school committee visiting the candidates district and the candidate visiting stakeholder groups in the district in Gloucester. And they've worked out surprisingly well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Melissa.
Thank you. Dorothy, getting back to the process of interviewing and maybe doing more than 1 per day. Having done about 6 superintendent searches in the past and different every time I've done them, are you expecting or suggesting that in between interviews that the committee deliberates a little bit on how they felt about the person they just interviewed? Or are you saying just go from 1 interview, take a break, no committee discussion, and then go into the next interview? Because I've participated in some searches where after the interview, the committee deliberates just to say, you know, their thoughts, strengths, and weaknesses and things like that. So how do you see this happening if we do more than 1 interview in a day?
Well, you know, I think the question is the same whether you do 1 a day or whether you do multiple ones a day. Do you wait till the end to share your thoughts, or do you do a little bit after each one? It's really up to you. Again, I've seen it done both ways as well. Most commonly, I see the deliberation happen at the end of the entire process.
I mean, sometimes it's good to do it when it's fresh.
Yep.
And you can remember, but that also adds time to the evening. That's why I was asking, because if we schedule 2, say 2-hour interviews, because my experience is they can go up to 2 hours with all the follow-up questions. And then to have that time for deliberation too, you're talking about a 5 or 6 hour, a 5-hour.
Well, if you're going to deliberate, yeah, if you're going to deliberate after every interview, I would be very careful to keep it to a real short, here's some initial thoughts, and only spend 10 or 15 minutes doing the deliberation.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of trepidation in doing too much deliberation, particularly after the first interview when you haven't seen everybody. It's good to get out to hear what other people think, but and bounce off your thoughts off of the other committee members. But I don't think you want to go too far down the road. Laura?
Just so, having looked at what you sent about site visits, would we then, as a school committee, be doing a background check before these interviews? So that if there were any questions we would be able to ask, or where would we put that if we're going to do the interviews before any site visit?
Generally sort of the reference checks and the site visits are going on at the same time. There could, I mean, some of the reference checks and background checks could be going on at the same time the interviews were going on, but wouldn't necessarily happen for each candidate beforehand. You would be basing your questions more on the information that you received in the packets and a basic set of questions that you would ask of each candidate. From there, you would narrow the pool. And then when you got to a final interview of that narrowed pool, then you would be able to ask some of those more specific questions that, that might come from doing the background checks or the site visits.
Okay, and just second, is this preliminary round of interviews? Is this all executive session?
Nope, nothing in the process is executive session from this point out until you're negotiating a contract.
Okay, so all of this is public.
Correct.
So
Correct.
okay, so that's important to know, especially when it comes to background checks and referring to personal references. Okay. Thank you.
So the first thing we need to decide is whether we want to do 5 interviews on 5 different days, or whether we want to do 5 interviews on 4 days or 3 days. Kathy?
I think doing them 2, 2, and 1 would probably be the best, because then you'd be doing them in a closer time frame to have a frame of reference of one versus another. That would be my preference if we could.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? If we were to do 5 separate interviews on 5 separate days, that would mean we would do them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday next week. So I don't have a problem with that. What time of the day do you recommend, Dorothy?
I generally, if you'd like to, particularly if you'd like to do 2 in an evening, the screening committee was able to start at 4 o'clock, which was great, because then the evening didn't get too late. If you're going to do 2 in an evening, and hopefully you would be able to start by 5 o'clock.
Okay, well, Kathy?
I just want to point out, we have BNF on Wednesday. Our monthly BNF is on Wednesday.
Yes, and we have Bill.
GAPE on Monday.
What'd you say, Joel?
We have GAPE on Monday, right, Melissa?
No?
We're not negotiating right now with anybody.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
We settled.
I thought we were starting over.
God, no, not now.
We do have, there will be a building committee meeting on Tuesday.
Is there a way to do like daytime meetings? Can we do one during the workday, or is that not possible for other?
I'm sure the candidates will accommodate that. It's a matter of whether it fits your schedules.
Well, I have Zooms every single day. I'd like to be involved in choosing a superintendent, or at least get into the interviews. This is impossible. I had 7 Zooms today. So during the day, it's kind of hard. So if you can at least schedule a couple at night, I'd appreciate it. I mean, missing 1 or 2, but like I said, then I won't vote at all.
Well, one thing to consider is they'll all be recorded. And if you miss one or can't be there at
it's
one.
not the same when you ask a question and feel the person out. It's bad.
No, I understand, but it doesn't, all I'm saying is it doesn't automatically disqualify
well, that's
you.
okay. Then you can choose one and then throw me under the bus like with everything else. That's fine. Thank you.
I'd like to suggest that we do not start meetings before 5 o'clock. I have to work. Other people have to work in the community that might want to participate in this. We do have meetings at night. We have a policy that says our meetings are in the evening, and we rarely had meetings start before 4:30 with school committee.
Sure.
So I would say 4:30 at the earliest.
Okay, I have work a few nights next week, so that's all I was trying to figure out. There was a way we could balance. I think the other city meetings and stuff.
Well, let's just play this out a little bit further. If we have a meeting, do 1 interview a night next week, that means we finish up on Friday night. We would then want to sit and decide on the 2 or 3 finalists, right, Dorothy? And then once we did the 2 or 3 finalists, we would then do the site visits on going both ways, as well as the interview. Would we do the, in the past, or at least the last one I was involved in, we did the site visit to Gloucester from the people, and then we did the interview, the final interview that night.
Mm-hmm. Can I just throw one more, hope this doesn't confuse things more than help, but interviews can take place on Saturday morning or Saturdays as well.
Okay. Laura?
Yeah, so I'm out on Saturdays during the day and Friday nights. So just to say that I have some time restrictions.
Okay. But I will say it again, that because everything is recorded and the questions will be to some extent predetermined, there'll be a group of questions that every candidate will be asked. That as long as you review the recordings, I don't think not being there disqualifies you from participating in the final decision. Is that the way you think, Dorothy? Is that?
I mean, optimally, everyone would be able to participate. A little bit different in this environment. I think the recordings will be closer to what people experienced in the interview, but still, obviously, optimally, everyone would be able to attend to every interview live. I think Melissa has a question.
Melissa, yeah.
Suggestion. I mean, it seems like asking us to do 5 days is going to be a lot because of our schedules. So I'm wondering if we can revisit the conversation of maybe 3 nights next week and do 2, 2, and 1, and find out if there's 3 nights that we can all make it and start after 4:30.
Joe, what night do you have meetings?
I can do Monday, Tuesday, Friday after 4:30 next week. Wednesday and Thursday I have work.
Samantha?
I was just gonna say, why don't we take it day by day? And like Monday, does it work? Tuesday, does it work? Can we maybe just see if people are available after 4:30 on Monday and then move on from there?
All right, that sounds like a reasonable approach. I'm gonna turn the light on so I can see. So Monday, 4:30. Melissa?
So I get out of work at 4:30 and can be home by 4:45. I don't mind entering a meeting late, but just know that I have to stay at my desk until 4:30. And if I get an emergency, I might not even be able to leave if there's an emergency hearing. But that's okay. I would just know that if I get out at 4:30, I might be 10 minutes late into the meeting.
Okay, so let's see as the possibility of doing 2 on Monday. If we start at 5 and allow 2 hours, we could do the second one at 7. And in theory, be done by 9. That gets 2 done. Is that agreeable?
Works for me.
Okay.
I have ordinance and administration, but I can Zoom on 2 of them. I've done more than multi-one Zooms, so that'll be fine for me.
Oh, okay, good. So if we could do 2 on Monday, one at 5 and 1 at 7. Now Tuesday, as I said, there's a school building committee meeting. We haven't set the time yet. We could set it at 4. Which would be close to starting at 5. But Joel, did you say Tuesday's good for you, right? And does anybody else have problems on Tuesday besides me and Kathy?
Oh, I have to check. Hold on. That's city council, isn't it? Yeah.
They don't have an agenda this week posted.
No, they met this past week.
This week. So wait a minute.
Yep.
It should be
Because I'm
off.
still trying to. Are we definitely going to do Monday at 6 p.m.?
We want to try to do 2 on Monday, 1 at 5 and 1 at 7.
All right. So this way I can block that off, and then I'll let you know.
Okay, Tuesday. Like I say, we probably couldn't commit to starting till 5:30.
Yeah, I have, as long as I'm off by 7, I have to do a live stream with Senator Markey.
Okay. Or we could start at, I could start, we can try to schedule the building committee a little bit earlier. Or maybe just do one on Tuesday.
I was going to say, you don't have to do 2, 2, and 1. You could do 2, 1, and 2 if you find another night. For...
Right. So let's just, for the moment, put on Tuesday, 1 at 6.
Okay.
Wednesday, you have BNF, Kathy, at 5. What time is?
Correct, at 5.
Okay. And do you anticipate a long meeting?
It's mostly the standard monthly items. And we were going to we're going to talk about the budget for next year, given the city's last number that they put forth. So we wanted to start, at least get, start those discussions to understand what the implication might be. But we could try to be done at 6:30.
Yeah.
You can always add another meeting for that too, or change the schedule for BNF if it interferes with this. If we can't figure out another way.
Well, if we could start at 4:30 for BNF, then we could schedule, say, 6 o'clock for interview.
Yeah, we could definitely start earlier.
Yeah.
I have no trouble starting, at 4.
You're in BNF. That's is that a problem?
No, but I'm also at PND that night. So Wednesday and Thursday I have other meetings. PND I might be done by 7. But yeah, it is Wednesday and Thursday. I have PND, BNF, and then I have I think Wednesday's Concom also somehow, and then Thursday's Planning Board. So those 2 nights I have other meetings scheduled, but we could do a later one maybe on Wednesday. Otherwise, if you guys do it without me, you do it without me. But Wednesday and Thursday I have other meetings back to back. Friday I have open, and Tuesday, if we do it after your building committee meeting, I'd have that open too.
So is there any way you could do, if you can do 2 on Monday, you could do 1, 1, and 1, if you could work around the times for the other 4 nights?
Well,
Laura, what time would you have to be done by on Friday?
By 7, say. So if we could start at 5 or 4:30, that's easy.
What about that following Monday for interviews?
Memorial Day?
It's a Memorial Day.
Yeah.
It's a holiday.
Yeah.
That might be a problem.
Sorry, I forgot.
I don't know. No one's going to a cookout, right?
Yeah, nobody's going to the parade. Samantha?
I would rather have them in the same week if possible. I think it would be nice, for comparison's sake.
Well, so if we could do 2 on Monday, 1 on Tuesday, 1 on Wednesday, it leaves just 1 more to do. And so the question is Thursday or Friday better?
On Wednesday, oh, that's why she works.
What if it was Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday? What if Wednesday was the one we didn't do? Is that workable?
Well, you're tied up almost all Wednesday, right? There's no option.
Wednesday's pretty rough for me, but Thursday might be planning might be short enough that I would either we'll only have to miss some of it or we'll be done in time, depending.
I was going to suggest on Wednesday if we move the interview to when BNF usually is, and then do BNF later. Somebody else could be an alternate for BNF because Joel will have his meeting. I just think in terms of the process of getting these interviews, both for the candidate's sake and for having them, like Sam said, in a more close proximity of each other, I think it's just more respectful to the process to keep it moving along for the candidates as well. And so, Joel, unless you have an objection to or preference of what you think is most important, but would that work if somebody else participated in BNF?
I mean, I think realistically, Wednesday is such a mess for me anyway. I just don't think it's going to work. But again, like if this is, I'm not more important in this process. So if Wednesday is the third day, then Thursday for everybody else, you know, like too bad, so sad. This is my reality. I'll have to watch the recording and that'll be what it is, you know?
I can move the building committee meeting to almost any time in the afternoon on Tuesday. So do we want to try and do 2 on Tuesday, 5 and 7 again? Does that work?
I think that works.
Not for me.
Building committee?
No.
No?
It doesn't work, no.
Doesn't work.
I told you 7 o'clock I have to get, I'll do 2 Zoomings. I'm doing 2 by side. Everyone that you've said, I'm concurring with 2 of them. So I'll have 1 Zoom on my iPad and 1 on my laptop that I can listen to both and see the interviews. But on 7 o'clock on Tuesday, I have Senator Markey live stream that I have to participate in. We need funding so you can hire your superintendent.
You're doing good work there. We need that done. So, but let's move Tuesday to 5 instead of 6.
So Thursday,
so
what
you said, Joel? You said Thursday's probably more flexible than Wednesday.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Thursday there's room to work.
It was earlier or later, 5 or 7, which works better?
Let me double check the agenda for the planning board because they used to meet at 7. I think they're meeting at 5. Give me 1 more second. I'm looking it up right now. So I haven't published yet. So last meeting was at 5 for them. So I'd say 6 o'clock. I'd probably be okay on Thursday.
So, Joel, is this Thursday?
Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we do 1 at 6 o'clock on Thursday and 1 at 5 o'clock on Friday, that gets our 5.
Can I just point out, if we do it at 5 o'clock, because if you deliberate then, and Laura has a hard stop, you want to make sure that you start early enough so she can be in the full deliberation.
So could we start earlier on Friday? Could we start at 4 on Friday?
Yep, fine with me. I don't know about Melissa, she works.
She's nodding her head.
I should be okay unless I get called in, but if I get called in, I get called in. Nothing I can do.
Yeah. So 4 on Friday. That gets, and then, so if you have a hard stop at 7, Laura, then that should still give us an hour or an hour and 15 minutes to deliberate. And we're not deciding on the final candidate. What we're doing is narrowing down the field at that point. So, okay, is that, so what I have right now is Monday, 1 at 5, 1 at 7, Tuesday, 1 at 5, Wednesday, 1 at 6, and Friday, 1 at 4.
I have Thursday 1 at 6.
I thought it was Thursday and nothing on Wednesday.
Nothing on Wednesday.
All right, all right. Excuse me. Forgot to write down the day next to the list there. Okay, so that will give us time. Now, assuming everything goes well, and we, on Friday night, we down to 2 or 3 candidates, what do we do next?
Then the following week, we would schedule the site visits. If you're deciding on Friday, we'd need to give the candidates a couple days to pull things together after Friday, which means the site visits probably couldn't start, especially given the holiday. Maybe when
Requirement, open meeting law.
there's no, site visits don't need, the school committee doesn't participate in the site visits to Gloucester. That's what I'm thinking, that maybe some of that could be scheduled.
Wait, the school committee doesn't participate in the site visits?
Of the candidate coming to Gloucester, the school committee goes to the candidate's district, but it's a site visit.
Okay,
So
because it's a Zoom meeting and it's not, doesn't have to be posted?
it's a site visit.
So what you're saying is they would come here first and we would go there second?
I mean, we could have different candidates going different ways the same day too. But I think it's not realistic. It's not really realistic to start site visits until probably Thursday, the 28th. So you're,
So would we go, if they were to come here,
yep.
That would just be set up. That would not be something the school committee would necessarily be involved in as a committee.
Correct.
This is where they would meet with Mike Hale. They would meet with the chief, the two chiefs. They might meet with some principals. Is that?
Yep. And you might have, you would probably have a time when faculty could visit with them. They could have a conversation with faculty, a conversation with the administrators, conversation with parents.
Okay, so because these are being done, there's going to be a lot of coordination.
Yep. And I've done this a few times now. I'll work with whoever the appropriate person is to get it all coordinated.
All right. So if we did, so we don't know whether we're going to have 2 or 3.
Yep.
And if we start on the 28th, I guess what I was getting to, is there any way that we can do 2 on the same day?
I think so. Yeah. Yep. I think
it's just scheduling. If they're going to meet with the chief, one can meet with the chief, and one can meet with the DPW, and then vice versa.
Yep. You could do 2 on Thursday, 1 on Friday. You could do one person visiting Gloucester while the school committee visited another person. Does that make sense?
Well, that comes down to the other issue is the site visits. Is it required that everybody on the school committee go on that?
No. Generally, you're lucky if the full school committee participates in a site visit. Generally, whoever is available goes, participates in the site visit, and reports back.
Okay, so realistically, if we could get, because we don't have, I don't know how many people could spend a whole day doing a site visit to another community.
Yeah, and generally in this environment, they haven't lasted a whole day. They've lasted only, say, half a day or even shorter, because you're not traveling.
Yeah.
And so they have been lasting, I'd say, 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. But they are during the day, because that's when you're going to go talk to principals and okay.
Yep.
Okay. So we conceivably could have them visit here and we could visit there on the same day?
Correct.
Okay.
Candidate A could be in Gloucester and you could be visiting candidate B.
So we won't know whether we're going to have 2 or 3, but let's plan on using Thursday and Friday of next week, the week after.
Yeah, 28th and 29th.
For our site visits, and possibly the following Monday if need be. And then we're going to bring them in for final interview.
Yep.
So that runs, because we don't know whether it's 2 or 3, it's getting a little hard to be too precise about the days. But what it looks like right now is that we want to try to wrap this up the first week in June somehow.
Yes, I think that is 100% feasible.
Okay. All right, so let's just work on next week. Questions? How are we going to, Melissa?
So wrapping it up the first week in June, does that mean we're deliberating the first week in June, or is it a school committee on the 10th? Meeting?
I would deliberate as soon after the final interview as you can. If it's immediately after, you know, generally you school committees move to deliberate immediately after the last interview, that same evening.
I mean, conceivably that could be as early as Tuesday and Wednesday of the first week of June, or could be later in the week. But I think there's enough space there that we could get it wrapped up. I'll have to look at the agendas, but as we can, if we have any, we're meeting all the time. These are all public meetings. These are all, you know, if we have some business that is necessary, we can always just tack it on to one of these interviews at the end or the beginning of the interview. So what I was going to say is questions. You have a packet of questions available?
So I did a couple of things. I have a packet of questions. So when you get the information on the candidates, the other thing that you'll be getting is our developing questions guide. I know you can't see it on the little screen, but it's a guide. It's not something where you must take the questions from this guide, but it'll give you some ideas and some, you know, you might find just the right question in it, or you might find a jumping off point for a question, or you might say, I've already got my question. What we generally suggest is that the school committee members, so if your interview is going to last roughly, you know, however long it lasts, what you want to be able to do is have not too many questions to ask, because you want to be able to ask follow-ups, and as much as you can make it a conversation with the candidate. So I would say if each of you was prepared to ask 2 questions, then you could use those as the jumping off point for asking follow-ups. And that would give you a good base of questions to ask of the candidates on different topics. What I did was think about the different topics that you might ask about. And what we generally suggest is that school committee members pick a topic, have questions lined up on their particular topic, but not talk in this meeting about the specific questions, since it is a public meeting and you don't want to like tip your hand totally on what the questions are that you're going to be asking the candidate. But everyone be prepared to ask 2 questions, have a list of other questions ready in case a question, you know, someone else asks a question that was similar enough to yours that you feel it was already covered, so you have a chance to ask another question. What I did was look at the different question topics and categories that are often covered, or that I felt were important from what I've learned about what you're looking for in a superintendent should be asked. And if I can share my screen, I will show you the list of question topics. But I can't share my screen. So I don't know if if that can change.
Brendan, if you're here,
I am.
You able to allow Dorothy to share her screen?
Yep, just 1 second.
Okay.
Can you go ahead and try now?
I will try.
There we go.
There we go. Make it a little bit bigger for you. So these were the topics that I thought would be good for you guys to ask. Questions about this district specifically, why, why this district, or sort of show knowledge of the district. Questions about leadership and management, curriculum, instruction, and assessment, meeting the needs of all students, communications and public relations, relationship with the school committee, budget and financial questions, building projects, teaching and learning, collective bargaining and relationship with the union, about personal attributes and style, and about professional development and evaluation.
Okay. So basically, the way we would proceed, and because we don't really want to do this in public session, because we don't want to let everybody know what questions we're going to ask, are you going to coordinate this, Dorothy?
I could coordinate it. People could, we could do it a couple ways. People could just pick a topic or get assigned a topic tonight, and then do their questions on that topic. Or there are 2 topics, right? Because there's 12 topics. People could send questions to me, and I could make sure every topic was covered and make up a list of questions.
Okay, well, the just for people who aren't aware, we need to be asking the main questions to each of the candidates, the same question.
Right.
That's very important. Follow-up questions are different. There may be specific things about specific candidates that you want to allow, but the base questions have to be consistent. And I don't know if you think this is a good idea or not, but I've been on committees where basically we have the base questions all printed out and we hand it to them as they walk in, so that they can see them instead of having to ask you to repeat the question.
So Jonathan, just that is the way I usually work. Okay. It's hard to hand someone the question when they're coming in through Zoom.
Right.
So
yeah.
So basic. I mean, and the screening committee was really, they had the same issue, right? That sometimes questions might have 2 parts, and they were really good at saying to the candidate, if you need me to repeat the question, or if a candidate didn't hit it all, they would say, also, could you hit on? So they were really good about making sure that the candidate had all the information they needed to thoroughly answer the question. But what I usually do, what I can do for you, is I make up the list of questions and send it to the school committee in a format where you have a chance to write your notes by every question, so that you can keep sort of your running notes during the course of the interview.
Okay. Well, do we want to decide the different topics that people are going to ask questions on, or do we want to just assign them? Because like I say, they're going to be the same for all candidates. Do people have preferences, Melissa?
I'd like to make a suggestion, just because, like I said, I've been in a position before to get to this point, and it can be very difficult because everybody has their favorites and things like that. So I'm wondering, all of these topics are important. I mean, this is what we advertised, and this is the situation we're in with these topics. And I'm wondering if we could do something like each person gets 2 topics and we pull them out of a hat. That way it's just random. And when you get your question booklet, and you can go to the assigned topic that you were chosen for and pick a couple questions out. I can't imagine inundating Dorothy with our own individual questions and her trying to pull this all together. And we had a hard time coming up with a schedule for interviews, much less figuring out who's going to pick what topic here. Unless you just want to randomly assign someone, Jonathan, as chair. Okay. I mean, just go down the line and give the one after the other. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to think of a fair way of assigning where it's just a random thing as opposed to someone trying to be specific about something. Because all the topics are important and they should all be questioned, in my opinion.
the other thing is that no matter what question you ask, anyone on the committee can ask a follow-up. You don't ask a question, just, you know, you're not limited. The person who had the question isn't, you understand what I'm saying. I'm having trouble getting the order right, but anyone can ask a follow-up.
Not limited. The candidate's not limited to just that question. We can ask follow-ups to it.
Right. Okay. So can you, I can't see everybody because I'm looking at this. So I don't.
You want me to stop my screen share? I'll stop.
We'll leave it up there for a second. Does anybody have any strong feelings about wanting to ask questions about a particular topic? And I can't see you all, so just speak up.
No.
I'd love to ask about communications and public relations, but I'm happy to ask about anything.
Okay.
Jonathan, I don't have a preference.
I don't know what I'm going to ask until I see the person. I really don't know. I don't know what I want to ask. Sometimes you just think it comes off the top of your head. I really don't know.
Yeah. Well, like I say, we have to. We do have to go in with a set questions that we ask everybody. That's just, you know, the rules of the game these days.
But I mean,
other questions.
Topics, I don't know which one right now. What I mean, I'd pick one of those, but I wouldn't know until I see the person.
All right. So
we'll stick with the topics.
If nobody else has any preference besides Laura, and like I say, I can't see all of you whether you're raising your hand, so just speak up. We'll just assign them, and Dorothy's going to send out some suggested questions, but if you want to modify those questions, then what we need to do is send those back to Dorothy saying, I'm going to be talking about building projects, and I want to ask them what experience they have in building projects, something like that. And you send that back
to the leadership and management. I would like to know how they're going to take charge if there's certain criteria, because the rest of you do the bargaining relationship, but the leadership, I mean, you need someone who's going to lead. You need someone who's going to take control, like the situation we had with the COVID. You need leadership.
Yes, yes.
We don't know what's going to happen in September. I would like to know, you know, has you know, he or she been involved in, you know, what's been happening? Are they updated? Do they know how they're going to interact with the community, take a leadership role? You know, that's very important right now.
Okay, well, so what I was going to say is that we will send out with the packet. I will meet with Dorothy afterwards and assign people two different topics, and you will then pick out the questions that you want to ask on those topics. Does that sound?
So can I ask if people can, once they know their topic, if they can get their questions to me by Friday, so I can format the questions and turn them around and get them to you?
Does anybody see a problem with that?
Fine.
Okay.
So just a couple pointers that when you're asking your questions, making them 5 or 6 part questions gets really complicated. So try and make them sort of broad and don't telegraph the answer you want in the question. And the other thing to think about is you sort of want a mix of how have you and how would you, not all how would you. Because they could like spout a really good theory, but you really want to know that they've done the work. So we want to think a little bit about making sure questions ask about their past experience as well as their sort of their philosophical bent and so forth. So just a couple of pointers in thinking about your questions.
Okay. Anything else that we need to do right now? I might suggest that we on the Monday interview, if we could start actually convene 15 minutes before 5. So we have a chance to just go over things before we are sitting down with the candidate.
I would suggest in the interviews that I've done, I mean, Jonathan, you and I can decide who sets up the Zoom.
Yeah.
But we should definitely set it up with the waiting room so that the candidate can't come into the interview until you are ready for the candidate.
Right, right. Okay.
Can I ask a question related to that? So if we're interviewing Monday at 5, what's to stop the other 4 candidates to watching that interview and knowing the questions?
Well,
isn't this an executive session?
No, it is not executive session.
Oh, so they could have come to any public meeting if it was held in person, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that you kind of count on that. You'll know if they're there. That might,
yeah, we'll know.
That might color your opinion on the candidate, I guess.
Well, might give you some insight.
Okay.
Okay. All right, anything else? Because we still have some things to do.
So Jonathan, as soon as we can, you and I will coordinate who will ask, or are you just going to assign people? I'll send you the list of topics.
I'm just going to assign people other than the mayor asked for leadership and Laura asked for communications, and after that we'll just divvy them up and send it out tonight with the packet. So if we're probably going to be busy for another, we got a first reading of a policy. We got a couple little business things to take care of and an update on MSBA. What's it?
Do you want to just get in touch with me at the end of the meeting and we'll?
Yep, I'll call you. I'll call you when I'm free.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next item of business, which is the committee reports, and we have a report from the school committee Ad-Hoc Communication Subcommittee of May 5th, 2020, and they are going to bring forward the first reading of a new policy. So Laura, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. So yes, the Ad-Hoc Communication Subcommittee met on the 5th of May, and we approved a social media policy, which is here for the first reading tonight. So that was our main order of business. And then also on the agenda was Samantha report on a meeting, but that meeting hadn't happened. So, so that was that. So as far as the policy, it was in the packet. Do people, I don't know how you normally do this. Do you read it aloud, or do people just have a chance to read it and ask questions? You're muted, Jonathan.
It should be read aloud into the record. Okay. It's not that long. And the purpose of having a first reading and a second reading on a new policy is so that if any committee members want to make changes, they can bring those forward for the second reading. Okay. But so the normal process is to read the policy and then ask for approval for it to be considered the first reading.
Okay, then I'll read it. Before I do, let me just say that our attorney Naomi looked at this and some changes were made based on her advice. And she also looked at the rest of there's an electronic messaging policy, and she looked at that as well and determined that that would not need to be changed at all based on this. So just to give that background. Okay. So here's our policy, the social media policy for the Gloucester Mass School Committee. In its efforts to engage the Gloucester community, the Gloucester School Committee has developed this social media policy with the goal of providing timely information about Gloucester Public Schools and the proceedings of the school committee. Number 1, messages posted to an official social media account must be A, information coming directly from the superintendent or others in the administration. B, information on meeting times, locations, agendas, etc. This may include not only school committee and subcommittee meetings, but also school building committee, city council, and other meetings relevant to Gloucester schools. C, articles containing information about school programs. D, this is the language is incorrect. Amplified Gloucester High School or other Gloucester Public Schools' periodicals, other school social media, including parent-teacher organization accounts. 2, the school committee will appoint 2 school committee members to be designated posters. They will work in coordination with each other and the Gloucester Schools Director of Information Technology. If other school committee members want posts on the page, they will send to designated posters. 3, there will be no deliberation of any kind, nor school committee positions on outstanding issues represented on this page. 4, for Facebook, page set up as a public page with comments turned off for posts. There should be no discussion on these posts. These are for information only. B, direct messages will be discouraged. There will be an automatic response that offers school committee email addresses, as well as instructions on how to speak at a school committee meeting as the ways to contact the school committee. C, page will be set up by Gloucester Schools Director of Information Technology and will be linked with the Gloucester Schools system. The school committee page will not be linked to any single member's personal page. 5, any changes to or deviations from these rules must be voted on by the school committee. And that's the policy. So should I ask for approval first and then discussion? So is there a motion to, I can't hear you, Jonathan. Jonathan, you're muted.
Yeah, you want to make a motion that the school committee accept this as the first reading.
I don't know.
So there was a motion out of the subcommittee. It was a recommendation. So that's what we would read into the record.
Right. Whatever the motion was out of subcommittee. Do we have that?
I don't have that text.
It was recommended by the subcommittee to the school committee to adopt this policy, pretty much.
Okay. So, so I'm looking
Maria
for a
might
motion.
have it, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a motion to recommend to the full school committee to approve the first reading of the policy.
That's it.
So I make a motion to
just say so moved.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Joel.
Aside from the grammatical stuff in 1D that Laura noticed, I had 2 questions, and I'm not necessarily saying that it needs to be changed, but I just didn't understand it from reading it. So on number 3, where it says, nor school committee positions on outstanding issues, the school committee doesn't have a position until a vote is taken and an issue is no longer outstanding. So should that say school committee members' positions or something like that? And if that's not the intention, that's fine, but I thought I'd put that out there. And I'll list the 2 other ones and then you can take them up wherever you want to take them. On 4A, obviously, we only have control of whether or not people are commenting directly on the post itself, but if person A shares a post to their page and a robust discussion goes off the rails beneath it, we don't have any control over that. And so do we want to acknowledge that possibility exists and that we have no control and, it's, the way of the world? And then 4B, direct messages will be discouraged. Do we want to make it clear that say like incoming direct messages will be discouraged, outgoing direct messages will be prohibited? And that's my 3.
Okay, well, this is just for discussion. We will, if you want to make changes to this policy at our next meeting, which I'm not sure when that's going to be, we could squeeze this in on one of the interview nights. And we will then have a second reading in which those changes would be voted on, and then we'd vote the final policy. So that's the process.
Do we need to go back to the communications ad hoc subcommittee? No, Melissa's saying no. Okay, great.
No. These will, basically what I'm saying is that people should hone in specific changes and say, I want to change this to this. And then we'd have a vote on that, a separate vote. And then we would vote on the total in the end. Samantha.
Just a clarification question back to one of Joel's points. Joel, were you saying that, so if somebody shares a post from our school committee page and then people comment on it from there, are you saying that if a school committee member then engages sort of outside of the school committee page, that it's sort of at their own peril? Is that what you mean?
No, I would hope the school committee members wouldn't really be engaging. But what I'm saying is that my nervousness would be someone, shares, like you said, and a discussion happens on their page, and then someone tries to say the original post, therefore, is in violation of this policy. So if this policy acknowledges that we can't control what happens to the post after it's out there, all we can control is that robust discussion is not going to happen on this page. That would prevent any gray area as to whether a post suddenly needs to come down or something because, someone else took it and ran with it. Or do we want to have that, be the other way? If a post gets out of control on someone else's page, do we want to have, have it in our policy that we take it down so that it stops being a shareable thing? I don't know. I really don't know.
Samantha?
Go ahead, Sam.
I think, as long as what we're sharing is information only, if people choose to have a robust conversation about that information, that's up to them. As long as it's not on our, it's not on our direct page. I do think, back to that point though, that if a school committee member chooses to engage in a conversation on one of our posts, I think it is worth making a suggestion in this policy that it is not in that person doesn't speak for the whole committee. I think we do have to be careful there. Like if there's a conversation that happens on a shareable post, that a school committee member is careful. Does that make sense?
That's already ingrained in our policies that you can only speak for the school committee on things that the school committee has decided as a committee. If you are weighing in on presidential elections or something, you make it clear that you're not speaking for the school committee.
I guess the gray area lies, though, in whether or not a school committee member on their own personal page engages in a conversation on a post that originated from the school committee's Facebook page.
But that's...
Melissa?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if I was muted or not.
Yeah.
So if it gets shared to someone else's page, it's no longer ownership of the Gloucester schools. I mean, it's a shared post, but we're not responsible for it because it's the language underneath it isn't going to attach to the Gloucester's post. It's going to attach to the owner of the person who shared it. Mm-hmm. So like you said, we're just putting information out. I mean, we're not if someone tries to react to us, they're getting an email to tell them to contact us.
Right.
So there's no engaging back and forth with us. So anything that happens, if it's shared, is not on us, and we won't be able to take it down. And that's what happens. I mean, that's the way of Facebook and Twitter and other social medias.
Laura?
Well, I just wanted to, in response to Sam's question also, I think, Jonathan, what you were saying is what my understanding is, which is that as school committee members, we cannot be weighing in publicly on school committee issues as school committee members, right? Like, that's understood.
Well, if they're resolved issues, if we voted
Right.
to do
Right,
something, you can, you certainly, you know, can go to the city council like I did last night and advocate for the passage of the loan order for the security measures at O'Malley and the high school.
Right, but I mean, you know, when we wrote this, it was to be careful that there would be no sort of personal opinions on outstanding issues. So, and my understanding though is that that's understood for us as school committee members. So
I don't agree with that. You're going into First Amendment rights and things like that. Not that I'm trying to make trouble, but
that's in our manual. I mean, that's in our manual that we speak as a school committee. Like you know, that the school committee speaks as one on issues that are in the school committee.
Right, once they've been decided, not while it's being deliberated or discussed. People can have opinions until the school committee gets to a decision.
Well, like I say, this is the first reading. There is a provision in there about it's not for deliberation. I think we need to take this and look at it and come back at our next meeting with specific changes that you want to make. That it's good to air our concerns, but we're not going to change this policy tonight. That's for the second reading. That's the purpose of having a first reading and a second reading. So we have a vote. We have a motion and a second in front of us to accept this as the first reading. And I'm going to call for a vote at this point. Maria, could we have a roll call vote?
Or Mayor Taken?
Yes.
Ms. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Weeson?
Yes.
Kathy Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Favazza?
Yes.
Chairman Pope?
Yes.
And Ms. Prince?
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. And we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the school calendar, which as far as I know, unless somebody can correct me, the legislature has not taken any action on creating a holiday in September. So I would suggest that we just table this again without objection. And the other item here is school choice for 2020-2021 school year. For the new members, we have to take a vote every year saying that we will accept or not accept school choice in. We have no control over school choice out, but it's a question of whether we are willing to accept school choice in. And we have a policy in place about that, and it applies to the fact that we accept school choice in if we have room. I mean, if you want to choice into a kindergarten class that already has 22 students, then it's not available. So, so this is a formality. If we don't vote, if we don't take any action, it's assumed that we do. It's a positive. It's the same as a positive vote that we will accept school choice. Melissa?
That we accept school choice students if there's room for the 2000 2020 to 2021 school year.
That was a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, a roll call vote, Maria?
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. The remaining item is MSBA update. The selection committee for the CMR, Contractor Management at Risk, will be doing interviews on Friday. They're going to interview 3 different organizations. They are W.T. Rich, Shawmut, and why do I want to say Commodore, but it's not Commodore. So I'm having a senior moment here, folks. I'll get back to you on that. So they're doing the interviews. They'll make a recommendation to the full committee, the full building committee, on next Tuesday. What happens then is that the CMR is brought on board, and they participate in developing the estimates for the cost of the school, which will then be submitted in the presentation to the MSBA towards the end of June. I believe it's June 24th or 25th. Those findings will come before the school building committee on the Tuesday, and they will come to the school committee on Wednesday of, and I'll look at my calendar and tell you the dates. So that submittal is due into MSBA on the 24th. It will be given to the building committee on the 23rd, and it'll come to the school committee for approval on the 24th before it can be submitted. So that's what's happening. Things are fairly quiet right now, other than hiring a CMR, and as they're busy, everybody's busy doing estimates. Any questions? Laura?
What was the date that that's going to come to the school committee? May or June?
June 24th.
June, okay. I just
June 24th. To take it down the road, it gets submitted to the MSBA in the end of June, so that it comes before them, before the board in August. And they do a lot of vetting of it before it actually goes to the full board. And there may be some back and forth between the committee and the designers and MSBA to fully understand our proposal. But it will go for a vote. I think it's towards the end. I think the August 28th sticks in my mind, but I don't have that right in front of me. At that point, it's the city, it's to the city if once MSBA approves the project, they'll want to enter into an agreement with the city. That the amount of money that they will put into the project at that point is fixed. It does not go up. It is based on the estimates. It's based on our reimbursement rates. It's based on what's our eligible reimbursable items in the thing. And what will happen then is that we will take that and put it on the ballot for November. And it will require a debt exclusion override. And there'll be more to talk about that as we go along. There'll be more specifics. But essentially, on November whatever election day is, the 2nd, I believe, it will either pass or fail. If it passes, the designers will start in the MS, and everybody will start on developing actual bid documents so that it will build a school. They can put it out to contractors and subcontractors, and they will start, hopefully be able to start construction at the end of that school year. So in June of 2021, they'll be able to start construction, and hopefully they'll be able to open the school in the September of 2023. That's the timeline. There's a lot of things in between that happen, but that's the big picture right now. Kathy?
The question has come up whether the money that's for our project is possibly not going to be there given the current situation of the pandemic. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is because we're in the pipeline that that money has been set aside if, once they approve us. Is that true?
That's true.
Thank you.
Melissa?
When is the decision on the Article 97 expected?
I've been trying to find out when it goes to the House of Representatives. My understanding is that it has come out of committee with a positive recommendation. I haven't confirmed this, but somebody told me that it had been voted in the Senate with a positive result, but it still has got to go to the House. After that, what happens is we again request the school committee, not the building committee at this point, requests transfer of the property to the school department. So that's something that has to be in place by the August 28th date. I think that's, don't quote me on it. It's the end of August. I think it's August 28th. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? New business, old business? Dr. Sapphire.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
If you're coming to the end of the meeting, I just wanted to mention that the budget presentation to the Budget and Finance Subcommittee is Tuesday, June the 2nd at 6 o'clock.
We're going to have to take that into consideration for all of our superintendent stuff too. That's okay. Another thing. Melissa?
Oh, no, I was going to do a motion to adjourn, but I don't want to do it if we're not done.
Have at it. I think we're ready.
I move that we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
So moved.
Roll call vote, Maria.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
Ms. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Wiesen?
Yes.
Kathy Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Favazza?
Yes.
Chairman Pope?
Absolutely.
Ms. Prince?
Yes. Good night, all.
The meeting is adjourned.